As you know, we're very interested here in terms of the well-being of our military and certainly those who have retired from the military. It's a major focus of a lot of our conversations. And we're also very interested in new approaches to the health problems that many of our veterans experience, from PTSD to traumatic brain injury, all across the board. They deserve our finest health care. And that's why we're excited to bring to your attention the folks over at PharmAla. This is a fascinating new development that we want to explore, because what was kind of a popular street drug and party drug back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s might actually have a real medical use in the pharmaceutical community with regard to our veterans. Now, that's about as far as my knowledge on this goes. So let's bring in the experts. First, Nick Kadysh is the founding CEO of PharmAla Biotech. And with him is retired Captain Adam Marr. Now, he is a decorated Apache pilot, 400 combat hours. He's also a best-selling author, co-author of Tales from the Blast Factory, and he's operations director at the Veteran Mental Health Leadership Coalition. So I guess, Captain Marr, you sort of have firsthand experience here about the effects of war and how you need as many, potential solutions to what ails you. And I guess that's why you're here to speak on behalf of this new development.
Yeah, that's right, Larry. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. Thanks for having us. Like you said, I was an Apache helicopter pilot. I served for about 10 years, 400 combat hours, 1,500 flight hours. And when I was getting out, it was actually my older brother, Special Forces Green Beret, Andrew Marr, where I saw the effects of war first. He came home, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, 13 different symptom masking medications is what the military medical system put him on. So we began to search for alternative therapies. Both I, my younger brother, and other veterans like us were able to find these alternative therapies. And when you have something like traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, treatment-resistant depression, sometimes treatment-resistant from all these medications that we're experiencing, being able to get access to something like MDMA-assisted therapy, some of the other plant-derived medicines like ibogaine or psilocybin, it fundamentally transforms you. And that was the experience with me. I was an attack pilot. And so I did not have the ability to bring my engine power levers back to idle because I was attacking everything as a way of life.
Yeah, I listen, I want to hear more about what you went through, what you were experiencing, and how this MDMA therapy was able to help you. But let's cut to the chase here with Nick at PharmAla Biotech, because I sort of teased it along that this was a street drug. People took it
Yeah.
clubbing, MDMA. This is ecstasy. This is Molly, as the
Yeah.
kids like to call it.
This is exactly that. But what a lot of people don't know is for about 30 years, MDMA has been the subject of clinical research, in university clinical trials, in corporate funded clinical trials, and it was actually designated a breakthrough therapy by the FDA. So there's more research behind MDMA assisted therapy than there is for a lot of the drugs that we use every single day. And one of the interesting things about it, of course, is you're not taking it at a nightclub. This isn't like a once a day pill. You are taking the drug while you're undergoing therapy. So we often hear from people say, what about diversion? What if this gets on the street? Can't really get on the street because you only get the pill when you go in to see your therapist, and you're only going to be doing this for 3 months. So it's a
Okay.
very time limited therapy.
And what does MDMA stand for again?
So MDMA stands for 3,4-methylene dioxymethamphetamine. Say that 3 times
Yeah,
fast.
anytime I need to say it, I'm going to turn to you. But the problem is, because it was ecstasy or Molly or club drug or street drug
Yeah,
and everything, obviously,
it
immediately
is a controlled substance.
there's
Yeah.
going to be a negative reaction. It's a controlled substance. This is stuff that is going to screw you up and it's going to mess you up. So let's now focus on what appears to be a pretty great benefit. First, Captain Marr, tell me, you just said you were in attack mode all the time. I mean, all those combat missions in an Apache. I mean, that's a badass life that you lived there. But then when you come home, what was life like here? What were you dealing with?
Yeah, when I came home, I first saw it in my brother, and we started a nonprofit to start providing these solutions to our community. A lot of my trauma was from that attack mindset and not being able to be still, to be at peace, to be attacking everything as a way of life. So when I got experience to these modalities, these methodologies, it allowed me to finally be still and start to redefine the future and the life that I wanted, so I could show up and be a more complete father to my children, a more complete spouse to my wife. And then that started us where we started creating organizations and developing programs, partnering with, scientists and leaders like Nick and others to be able to better understand these, but then to also be able to start to advocate for these at the legislative level. That's actually where I met Nick in partnership with Veteran Mental Health Leadership Advocacy Effort and Psychedelics Canada, which Nick is a part of. We actually advocated together in the halls of Canadian Parliament on behalf of Canadian veterans, not just U.S. veterans.
So, if we could get Nick back on here, because how exactly does this work? Because the effects that Captain Marr was just describing, it sort of runs counterintuitive to what the
Yeah.
street reputation of this drug was.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually pretty remarkable. So if we were designing in a lab the best possible drug for the treatment of PTSD, you would want something that would allow somebody to go through in their mind, in their memory, the traumatic incidents that caused the PTSD, but without, triggering yourself. That's a real problem with treating PTSD is we put you in therapy, but then unfortunately, every time you think about whatever, the trauma is, the sort of the grain at the heart of your PTSD, you go into sort of fight or flight, right? Your adrenaline's pumping, your heart's racing, and
Sure.
you can't go through proper therapy in that condition. It's just not
Okay.
possible, right? I think anybody can understand that.
So
What
let
MDMA, yeah,
let me
sorry,
be
go
clear
ahead.
here, because I just want to make sure that
Yeah,
'cause whenever I have a question as you're talking,
yeah,
I
of
assume our viewers and our listeners have the same question.
course.
So this is not one of those things where it's like, here's a bottle of pills, go and we'll see
No,
how you're doing a month from now. This is actually a tool that you're using during an actual sort of therapeutic program, right?
absolutely. So it's 3 months of therapy, and you only go in for drug assisted therapy 1 day per month. So it's actually all in the entire therapeutic protocol is just 3 days. So you only take the drug 3 times. But
Wow.
what we
Okay.
found in both the clinical trials and now in the real world is after 3 sessions, about 70% of patients they don't have PTSD anymore. They lack the symptoms to be diagnosed as having PTSD. It's like a full cure for their PTSD symptoms.
So, Captain, I mean, at no point then it sounds like, based on what's being described here, is there any sort of danger of either you getting carried away with this drug or, God forbid, you sort of letting it out of your sight or it end up in some pusher's hands or something? This is all very controlled.
Right. It is very controlled, and this is part of what we're advocating for. We're advocating for programs to be able to be developed where you can go in and have the time to prepare to receive these doses, first in a medical and in a clinical setting. And then when you have that, you have these profound experiences. You have, these altered understandings of past traumas and things that you went through. But if you just leave it there, then that's not enough. You have to be able to have the support programs on the other side, the integration and support. And then another thing that we're finding is really important is that community to come back into. So
Uh-huh.
these are the things that we advocate for within the veteran mental health when we go and we're at the state and the federal or the international level. We want to expand access. We want to drive policy reform. We want to support this research. We have to strengthen the infrastructure. And we do that by empowering veterans who have gone and fought for our country, whether that's the United States or Canada or wherever, because that's what our leadership asked us to do. We came home to a broken medical system and we're dying at alarming rates. 120,000 veterans have died since 2001 by suicide. That's suicide. That's twice as much have died in combat in all of
Well,
Vietnam. Let that sit in.
and it's just a no-brainer that if this can help curb that or
Yeah.
stop that I mean, you got to try it. And real fast, Captain, before I get back to Nick, did you ever during your therapy feel any sort of addictive nature? Did you feel like, oh, I got to have another dose? I got to, did you feel like you were getting hooked on it or anything?
No, I never felt anything like that. What I felt was an extreme sense of love and connectedness. And I
Mm,
think when you boil it down to, I think love is one of the most powerful things on the entire planet. And
Wow.
so when you have a chance to be able to experience, tap into that, and view your past traumas, the things that happen in your life from a place of love and compassion, well, we need more of that in the world, and we need more leaders stepping forward in loving and compassionate ways. So
Well,
I
and
think
like
it's an incredible experience.
I assumed one of the objections people might have is, "Oh, you'll get addicted, you'll get hooked on this." So Nick, obviously, that's a firsthand experience that's not a
Yeah.
concern. Other than Adam's personal results, how do we know that MDMA has worked for a good swath of vets in this case? Have there been studies?
Yeah, so lots of studies actually. More, like I said earlier, I think more studies on MDMA than a lot of the drugs that get approved these days. Again, because it is a controlled substance, I think that there's a lot more pressure to really get this right. But in addition to all the clinical trials, of which there's been two phase 3 clinical trials. They've been published in Nature, which is like a very good journal for scientific research.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there's two countries in the world where PharmAla, our company, actually is allowed to treat patients like regular people with post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's Canada and Australia. And
Uh,
we get the results from those patients, I mean, day in, day out. And what we see is pretty remarkable. So, they have really, really debilitating symptoms to begin with. Obviously, they're not well. Then they go in for their first therapy session. That really helps. The second one, it helps a little bit. The third one helps a little bit. But the really remarkable thing is what happens 3 months and 6 months later, because these people continue to get better. Their quality of life improves, their symptoms improve, and they're not being treated anymore. The drug part of this is done. It's just 3 times, right?
yeah.
But they keep on getting better. It's a virtuous cycle.
It's interesting you should say that because as I was listening to Adam, as he was recalling his therapy, you could almost see him sort of go into a happy place, like there
Mhm.
was this
Yeah,
this this sort of memory recall. So, listen, I understand the FDA. I looked into this. The FDA looked at it about a year ago, determined that more research was needed,
yeah,
and now you've got a year's worth in Canada and Australia, certainly. But we've got a new FDA now. We got a new sheriff in town. You got Dr. Marty McCary over there at FDA. You've got Kennedy in charge of HHS. You've also got Doug Collins. He was a chaplain in the military running the VA as our new Secretary of the VA. I got to tell you, our show is seen by either those guys or people who work with those guys. What would you like to tell them right now? If Secretary Collins saw this interview, what do you want him to know for his vets?
Maybe I'll jump into this first and then Nick can follow up. I'm incredibly encouraged by Secretary Collins. I think he brings a lot of fresh vigor. He's out there having conversations. We just saw him on the Sean Ryan podcast, not too long ago, and he brought up the very point that we make, and that's that the VA this year is going to spend $500 million, right? $500 million on suicide prevention. But we have no statistical change in the amount of suicides that veterans are committing year over year. So he asked this question and I'll ask this question so he can be out there and raising the voice and raising the alarm. But we need more than conversations. We need the VA and the FDA to step up and to start taking practical action. And what we're saying is Nick is here. He's dedicated his career to this. I've dedicated my life to this. We have 50 plus organizations in our coalition. We have a multi-international thing. We're ready to come to the table. So I would say, Secretary Collins, I'll be looking forward to talking with you, sir.
and look, I would just add, we do this all over the world. It's not just the United States. There's a whole big world out there. There's lots of folks struggling, and there's best practices in a lot of different places. What we've seen in the U.S. is the VA actually funds a lot of clinical trials with MDMA now, because I think a lot of folks at VA see the potential. I think the real problem now is coming up with a solution that's not just a VA solution. It's got to be like a VA solution. It's got to be an FDA solution.
Yeah.
We got to really bring everyone to the same table and agree on a way forward. That's not just it's the easiest thing in the world to just say we need more research. Well, sure,
Yeah.
nobody's
Yeah.
against more research, of course, but it's an out because there's real patients that really need help today, and the research isn't going to help them.
Nick, is there any science backing up the reluctance to this going forward, or is it really this is a political thing because of the stigma attached to this drug?
Look, I think that there's always reasonable concerns. Reasonable people always have concerns. I don't want to take anything away from that. But I think when you're asking the question of why hasn't this yet been approved with the body of evidence that exists for this therapy, I would say, yeah, these are political considerations.
And I
These
would
are
just add
political
to that,
concerns.
when the veteran stands up and says, I was going to kill myself, but now I'm not because of this therapy. And by the way, over the last 20 years, we went and did what you asked us to do on foreign soil. Did you have the obligation to just listen to me and listen to my personal story of transformation? Now let's partner with Nick. Let's partner with the other leading scientists, the regulatory experts, and let's figure this thing out. Why are we having these experiences?
Yeah,
Let's understand it.
anytime you want people in charge of departments of the government like this to make a decision, there's going to be politics involved, and I
Of course.
understand. But that message right there, Captain, that's a pretty powerful message, I think, and it should sort of resonate with people. So, one last thing: anyone who's watching this who doesn't work in Secretary Collins' office or in Dr. Marty McCary's office, anyone else who sort of wants more information or wants to maybe advance this idea and let the people know that they're in favor of at least trying this, what can they do? What do you want them to do?
Adam, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out to me, LinkedIn, Instagram, the Veteran Mental Health Leadership Coalition.org, and reach out to us and let us know you want to support and be a part of the action. We're in multi-states. We're advocating on the Hill. And look, we're going to continue to prevent suicide and deaths of despair. We're going to do that by ensuring safe, affordable, equitable access to these emerging mental health treatments like MDMA-assisted therapy for the veterans and all Americans in need. And when we do that, we're going to help reshape the future of mental health care through this research, advocacy, and community collaboration. So if you want to be a part of that, please reach out to me.
And
And
for
Nick,
PharmAla, I mean, we're a publicly traded company, so we're pretty available out there. We actually
oh, there
trade
you
under the ticker symbol MDMA, so we're
go. Oh,
definitely easy
wow.
to find.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Captain, thank you for your service. Thank your brother for your service. The idea that you had to fly to Mexico to get this treatment after serving our country in the hellholes that you served, that's sort of weird, sort of unacceptable. Hopefully we can move the ball down the field on this. It seems like at the very least we should try this out. Let's just see if it makes a difference, especially considering the suicides and the PTSD that you're all suffering from. So thank you so much, Captain, for your service. Nick, thanks for the information. Appreciate it very much. And that'll wrap it up for this edition of Larry. Thank you so much for watching today. We'll be back at the same time, same place. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.